I follow some principles in life, and they all are drawn from the Indian philosophy. One of them is Nishkam Karma Yoga. The second one is Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Third one is Atmanirikshan. And the fourth one is foresight or Durdrushti. It proves that mere economics is not enough to prevent a conflict or war. That there are a lot of other factors, strategic factors, emotional factors, religious factors, which have to be taken into consideration. Artificial intelligence poses four big risks in future. One is if the AI goes out of control. The second is if it gets into mass manipulation. The third is if it breaches cybersecurity and part of that cybersecurity of the nuclear governance system. And the fourth is AI can produce biological and chemical weapons. So terrorism in future will be extremely dangerous because of this advanced AI.
Welcome to the Bridge Chronicle, and you're watching Bridge the Gap, our special series. And today, we have a very special guest with us, Mr. Sundeep Waslekar, President of Strategic Foresight Group and a pioneer of parallel diplomacy.
Former student to world peace architect. It's a long journey for you, and I'm very keen, and I'm sure my audience is also very keen to understand how it has been over the years. I mean, studying philosophy, then getting into political and public policy space. I'm sure in those ages, it was fascinating career to get yourself into some dynamic multinational. But what drive you towards this socio-political space, that too also into international space?
I follow some principles in life. One of them is, and they all are drawn from the Indian philosophy. One of them is Nishkam Karma Yoga. The second one is Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Third one is Atmanirikshan. And the fourth one is foresight or Durdrushti. So, when I finished my graduation in commerce in Mumbai, I used to I was living in a chawl and I just used to walk up and down on the veranda. And I was thinking about the word economy just through contemplation and little bit of reading. And I crafted uh, an approach to restructure the global financial system. And I wrote an essay proposing my approach. I went around to various newspapers in Mumbai. Financial Express published it. And then I circulated it to some of the leading economists and policymakers in the world. I was 20 years old. I had taken all my education in Marathi. And I thought of this issue just through what they say, inner voice. I just heard myself and I thought of, and Vasudeva Kutumbakam. I thought of reforming the entire world's economy, not the economy of my town or the country, but the whole world. And this essay started getting discussed all over the world. So Jan Tinbergen, who was the first Nobel laureate in economics, he wrote to me and he said, this is the path we should discuss. And the president of the World Bank, Robert McNamara, he circulated it in the World Bank and he asked everybody to read it. And one by one, all the leading economists, policymakers, they started discussing it. And as a result of that, Oxford University invited me on a full scholarship to study there. And from commerce, I moved to PPE, which is the famous Oxford tripos for philosophy, politics, and economics. So I did that. And when I was finishing at Oxford, Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India. She wrote to me and she invited me personally to come back to India. So I came here. I was 24 years old at that time. And she wanted to organize a big peace convention and she asked me to manage it. But her plans changed after the Operation Blue Star of 1984 and after that she was assassinated. But in the meanwhile, all over the world, everybody knew that I had some thoughts on reforming the economy and driving a global peace agenda. So I was asked to lead a 8-nation peace mission from Rome to Ottawa uh, in the 1980s, and this is how the transformation happened.
Interesting and very inspiring journey of a Marathi Manus, and I'm privileged that I'm able to converse with you today, sir. You mentioned about Duradrushti, and that's exactly the title of your think tank, Strategic Foresight Group,
Right.
from Mumbai to UN. How in like you just mentioned that you started your work in 80s. How a think tank based in Mumbai was able to shape policies of United Nations and institutions around it.
So see, till 2002, um, I was doing a number of assignments, managing number of initiatives. Then in 2002, along with a couple of colleagues, I decided to set up the think tank to give a structure to my work. So Strategic Foresight Group was set up in 2002, and we have worked with governments of 65 countries by now. In addition, the UN Security Council, European Council of Ministers, and many other international organizations. But what's amazing is that we have had at any given time 20% full-time research team, and they were all young, and they were all Indian nationals, though they were educated in some of the best universities in the world. And the average uh, age of these young people, most of them young women, I would say, was 25 to 35. And these young women in the age group of 25 to 35 uh, structured policy options for many countries around the world. I just provided them guidance and I provided them vision, but most of the work was done by these young women. Uh, and one of them uh, went on to become foreign minister of Panama from my office to Panama as a foreign minister. Others have become heads of various organizations, and uh, and this has been a team effort. But we are very satisfied that we have had some impact.
Incredible, and I'm so glad to know that women are leading in your organization. Just curious to know what processes were followed to establish strategic forum in that international space. What I mean about processes as in what funding model was used by you, how you shape diplomatic relation. Was it very person centric, I mean you leading everywhere, your credibility or institutional credibility, or the kind of people who came together at the Strategic Foresight Group? What exactly lead you to that? I mean, if you can share a little more about the processes.
So, see, the group was founded by three of us: myself, Ilmas Fateh Ali, and Srikant Mendoge. And so, Ilmas, she was a young woman when she started, and she was the founding executive director. So, basically, she has run the institution. She made the institution what it is. Uh, my role was primarily to provide a political vision uh, and uh, and the intellectual guidance. But she did the building of the institution, and an important part of that was to select and nurture young people and to train them. Also to negotiate partnerships with different partner organizations, with governments. So all that was led by her. And then, of course, we encourage some of the younger researchers to take leadership roles later on, and we train them to uh, to manage projects, to negotiate, to prepare ground for diplomatic negotiations. So that is how the organization was run. We were fortunate in 20 years; we never had to look for funding even once or projects, and we never had to look for people. We always had governments approaching us with a request to do something, and we always had young people approaching us for jobs. But it wasn't easy to get into Strategic Foresight Group. On an average, we processed 500 applications for one person selected. Yeah, so the competition was very tough, and we mostly recruited young people who had done their masters from some of the best universities in the world. We had somebody from Harvard, somebody from Oxford. So they were all from the top universities in the world. And we we subjected them to all kinds of tests, including psychological tests, before they were even called for interview. So it was a tough recruitment process, and that's how it was possible to get the best of the lot. And we always had 500 people for each person we wanted. So, and it was the same with the governments. We never approached anyone. Uh, our principle was that we should produce something of high value, and if you create a value, uh, then you don't really need to approach anyone. So when we had a brainstorming session, when we decided to create Strategic Foresight Group in 2002, we decided that we'll follow only one rule, and that rule is that whatever we want to do or whatever we are asked to do, it should not be done by anybody in the world, in the entire world. So if anybody else is doing it in the world, we will not do it. So we will not duplicate anything that's happening in the entire world, and not even, we can't even say that somebody else is doing but we are doing it better. That will not be the approach. We'll only do that if absolutely nobody in the world is able to do it, that we have to be the first ones or the only ones. So that was our principle. Then a lot of the work was research, and my instructions to my researchers were, you have all the freedom, but I don't want to see anything that I can find on internet. So that was my clear instruction, that whatever you do, I should not be able to find through Google search or through any other tools of the internet. So that was a simple rule. So except for hard data. I mean, if they have to find the length of a river or a capital of a country, that of course you can go on Google and find. But other than that, any policy ideas, any policy prescriptions cannot come from internet. So these were simple rules that we followed, that you have to be the only one in the world. The research has to be such that you cannot find it anywhere on the net, and uh, the governments have to approach us. We will not approach them. Uh, these rules we followed, and it worked.
I think what you are talking is original. I mean, you insisted on originality in research and the work that you have been done so far. And I have many questions listed by my team. I think in each question, I can identify how unique and original work that you have done. You just mentioned ILMAS. In 2000, you put a price tag on conflict, where you have quantified cost of conflict in Middle East as $12 trillion.
In 2008, yeah.
Yeah, 2008. It's a very curious case. I'm putting a price tag to a conflict. Generally, conflict we see through different perspective. Majorly, it is humanitarian perspective. What made you put a price tag on such conflict?
So in from 2004 to 2006, we were mediating improvement of relations between Western and Islamic countries. It was following the 9/11 uh, uh, terrorist attack. After that, there was a war on terror, and there was a breakdown in the relationship between West and Islamic countries. So in 2007, approximately, uh, representatives of the Arab League, the US administration, and the UK House of Lords, several of them, they came together in the US, in the House of Lords. So we had a meeting in one of the committee rooms of the House of Lords, and all these leaders, they reached the conclusion that the conflict between West and Islamic countries will go on so long as there are conflicts in the Middle East. So they asked us to prepare an impartial study on the cost of conflicts in the Middle East. So this was jointly commissioned by all the Arab countries and the US, and the US also acting on behalf of Israel. So we had all the parties uh, who had come together to, and it was financed by the government of Switzerland and Norway. Uh, so they offered to finance it, plus some help from the UK Parliament for holding meetings and other things. Now, a lot of people think when you measure the cost of war or cost of conflict is the cost of destruction, right? Because in a war, a lot of things are destroyed, infrastructure is destroyed, so the cost of that. And some people think is the cost you incur on your military expenditure. So people don't go beyond 2 or 3 parameters. So we define 100 parameters to measure the cost of conflict, 100 different parameters. And we developed a method using econometrics for calculating the opportunity cost of conflict. And using these parameters and data, we calculated the cost of conflict for the Middle East from 1991 to 2010 for 20-year period, though we were in 2008. So this $12 trillion opportunity cost was for the 20-year period. The report was launched at the United Nations in January 2009, but I don't think it has had any impact because the conflicts in the Middle East have gone on. It's been quoted everywhere, so it's made a good intellectual contribution, but it hasn't had any political impact because the conflicts have just continued and they have taken different forms. But what it proved uh, to me, that a lot of people think that that economic incentives can stop a war. And the aftermath of this report, even the report was uh, covered all over the world, and it was discussed in the Middle East. And in fact, there was an occasion when it was discussed by leading Israeli and Palestinian negotiators. Uh, uh, so they knew what the cost is, and and it uh, uh, it doesn't impact the minds of the policymakers. So a lot of people think that if you have economic cooperation, it will lead to peace. This proves it doesn't. We also had prepared a report on cost of conflict between India and Pakistan. There was a report on cost of conflict in Sri Lanka. And again, in Sri Lanka, after the report was published, the conflict continued, even though all the people had assimilated. So it proves that mere economics is not enough to prevent a conflict or war. That there are a lot of other factors, strategic factors, emotional factors, religious factors, uh, which have to be taken into consideration.
You rightly said that it's not only economic factor that comes into consideration. We are discussing conflicts. I think in your work also you have worked on different parameters as the Foresight Group proceeds further. The next is water and conflict. I mean, it's very again a unique concept that you are discussing water when you are discussing conflict. But before we go and discuss about that, you when you were discussing Strategic Foresight Group structure, you mentioned that your role was to more about delivering the political vision and political vision and alignment of the institution. And you just mentioned that though the idea was very unique, it was very much discussed in the political and intellectual space, but it had no concrete political and policy impact. So I mean, as a political insight person who's giving political insights to institution, what has been the challenge to drive this political force?
You know, this some ideas had big political impact, and some didn't. So our series of cost of conflict studies, that didn't change anything politically. But our work on blue peace, which is using water as an instrument of peace, that had tremendous impact in the last decade. So it varies. Our work on AI and nuclear weapons has had impact. Uh, so some ideas, uh, uh, are absorbed by the political class, and some are not. Uh, and it's fine. It's as a think tank, our endeavor is to both contribute to the knowledge of the field, to enhance the knowledge of the field, and to contribute uh, to a political change. You succeed in some endeavors, you don't succeed, and that's way of life. That's fine. So long as you are making some contribution, if not to the political change, then at least to the field, at least to knowledge, at least to raise the bar of knowledge in that field.
So, like you just mentioned about blue peace, economics. In fact, you used a very right word, not just economical cost, but opportunity cost.
Right.
I think, and I can see that you are very clear that it's not only about driving a political or policy change, but I think the vision is to contribute to knowledge. So, when you were designing this blue peace concept or the research and strategy around it, what really drove you towards taking water as something which can become an instrument in solving conflict of two countries?
No, it was a request. Uh, it started in the Middle East.
Okay.
After cost of conflict in the Middle East report was launched, uh, there were a lot of discussions, but nothing was changing. But at that time, many thinkers in Israel, uh, Palestine, and the Arab countries, they approached me and they said, "Look, this report is good, but you have to find something which will bring people together, and that something could be water." So this was a suggestion that came simultaneously from the Israelis, from the Turks, from the Arabs, and from several others. Uh, so we had meetings with Prince Hassan of Jordan. Uh, then the president of Turkey at that time, Abdullah Gül, was visiting Mumbai on an official visit. So he sought a meeting, and I had meetings with him. Simon Peres, the president of Israel, also wanted to discuss this. So almost all leaders in the region wanted to discuss, and they wanted us uh, to find a solution to the problem of mistrust. So we thought of using water, which was so far a source of crisis and conflict. Uh, we thought of finding a way to convert it into an instrument of peace and cooperation. So we did detailed studies of cross-border water flows in the Middle East, and we came out with a whole lot of solutions. And the package of the solutions is known as Blue Peace. Now, this Blue Peace was later on adopted by a number of governments to as an instrument of state policy. So, for example, the cabinet, the Council of Ministers of Switzerland passed a resolution, and they decided to make it as a state policy in their foreign policy. Wherever anything to do with water, now they use the Blue Peace as a parameter. Yeah, if if anything they want to do, if it doesn't meet the Blue Peace parameters, they won't accept it. And then once Switzerland accepted, several other countries also started accepting. So we started in the Middle East. Then the Blue Peace in the Middle East really succeeded. Turkey, or what was earlier known as Turkey, and Iraq signed several agreements which came out of our work. Israel and Palestine, they had serious negotiations, but that didn't result in any concrete agreement. But they did try. Uh, and then from Middle East, we were invited to intervene in Africa. Uh, so in Africa, we helped to create Congo Basin Blue Fund, bringing together 11 countries in Africa. Uh, then we also uh, negotiated between Bangladesh and India, but that didn't result in anything. But there was an effort. We have put the solutions on the table. Everybody knows that's the solution if you want to solve the Tista problem between Bangladesh and India. So basically, we produced a Blue Peace formula for several regions. So once it was presented to different regions, then we were invited by governments of 15 countries in the world to launch a high-level panel on Blue Peace. So 15 governments came together, and a high-level panel on a global high-level panel on water and peace was launched, and it operated from 2015 to 2017. In 2017, it produced a report to the United Nations. 2018, I called on the UN Secretary General with the chairman of the Global High Level Panel on Water and Peace, and we presented the report to him. And it has been a major success. It had some failures. The negotiations between Israel and Palestine leadership did not result in anything concrete, which is the reason why we are now seeing all the problems there. Uh, India, Bangladesh, nothing happened. Also, even though efforts were made, uh, but on the other hand, we had success in Africa. We had success in the upper part of the Middle East, which is Turkey and in Iraq. And then we had success with the Global High Level Panel on Water and Peace. And the biggest success was the UN Security Council, for the first time in the history of the UN, decided to convene a special session on blue peace on 22nd November 2016. And because it was a historic session, they opened it to all members of the UN. So 69 countries participated. I was in the Security Council from morning to night, and I was asked to open it along with UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Chairman of the Global High Level Panel on Water and Peace, Danilo Turk. And that was an experience I would remember for long.
Yeah, a little more about that experience. I mean, of course, it has been a long journey to be there. And I totally know that advocacy is not a one-day task. It takes decades to do some advocacy, and especially that you are talking about is war, conflict between two countries, international relations, and then a Marathi manus going to UN and talking about water, peace at UN's platform. How was the experience?
No, see what happened from around 1995-96. Every UN Secretary General wanted to bring the issue of water and peace to the Security Council, and this was not happening. For 20 years, every UN Secretary General made an effort, and they couldn't succeed. Uh, and so, as I said in the beginning, the principle of Strategic Foresight Group is that we will only intervene when nobody else succeeds. So here was a challenge where the Secretary General of the United Nations has himself failed, and not one, but all four Secretary Generals had failed. So we thought, okay, now we can intervene because they can't manage it. So, so we decided to intervene, and I tried to see what the Secretary General of UN had done. And they were always going to the five big countries. And the five big countries, the permanent members would not agree on anything. And that's how they could not succeed. What we did at Strategic Foresight Group, we studied in 2015, we studied the incoming composition of the Security Council for 2016. And we spotted that Senegal was elected. And Senegal has an extremely good, perhaps the best track record in the world in managing their rivers peacefully with their neighbors. So I went and met the president of Senegal, Macky Sall, at that time. It changed now. And I asked president, I said, you know, you will be in Security Council. And he said, yes, I'm happy. I said, okay, but you know, you're in Security Council. You will spend 2 years like any other country. Nobody knows who's in the Security Council after the time. So you should do something historic. He said, but we are a small country. What can we do historic? I said, look, you have an outstanding track record in managing your rivers jointly with your neighboring countries. So you are a good example of my theory of blue peace. So we will take blue peace to the Security Council, and you as a member of the UN Security Council, you can take it. And so he quite liked the idea. He instructed his ambassador in UN to cooperate with us, and we cooperated with the ambassador. We gave him a lot of input on how to negotiate with the Russians, with the Chinese, with the Americans. And so he was in New York. We were giving him input from Mumbai by phone and by email. And the negotiations succeeded, and the UN Security Council decided to convene a special session on 22nd November 2016. And so the president of Senegal thought that since it was my idea, it was only right that I should be invited to give an opening address along with, they call it briefing, along with the Secretary General and the chairman of the Global High Level Panel. So this is how it happened. So the problem was, normally UN Security Council resolutions are mandatory. Whatever they decide, it has a legal binding on all countries in the world. So the Russians were objecting to this session because of the conflict over river between Russia and Ukraine. And Ukraine was also a member of the Security Council at that year. So the Russians were objecting. So the Senegal ambassador said, well, this is not happening because the Russians are objecting. So I proposed a compromise that I said, we have the session, but we will not have a binding resolution. So the Russians were happy with that. And so I suggested a diplomatic solution, and this is how it happened.
In your last answer, you mentioned Israel-Palestine conflict. Just now you spoke about Russia and Ukraine. I mean, whatever I have understood so far from our discussion, that Strategic Foresight Group, you and your team has been consistently making policy recommendations to all these international partners. And I must say, a very wise decision of collaborations and partnerships to identify right people to reach out to, so that the advocacy effort is more and more meaningful. In your work also, it's observed that a lot of policy suggestions were made, and you are continuously making effort to highlight trends. And it's not just about your think tank, but this has been the process. The intellectual words keep giving insights and hints about upcoming trends, but despite of that, all these powerful people tend to ignore. Why? Sometimes it really bothers me. Why are they not very proactive in their decision making? I mean, you have worked across international leaders, so closely interacted with them. What a particular trend that you identify in leadership across globe?
No, see, in my experience, we we have found that that sometimes the political leaders are sensitive and they take action sometimes. So, in our work on Blue Peace, uh, I, when we began the work in 2010, people were saying that the next world war will be over water. But in the last 10 years, our efforts and also many other organizations were involved in trying to prevent any conflict over water, but not just preventing the ongoing conflict, but preventing, creating a methodology whereby there will be no conflict over water. And this has succeeded. There were lots of people in the world uh, that were engaged. And I would say, with efforts of all these people over the last 10 years and the political buy-in of this approach, uh, I don't see any big war erupting because of water. So in last 10 years, this has resulted in a concrete success for, not for us, but I mean we were part of it, but uh, 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 for the international community at large, that many people, many organizations, many institutions, uh, were political leaders engaged, and they saw that there was a point in uh, that there was a possibility of converting water into an instrument of peace rather than an instrument of conflict. And except for Egypt, Ethiopia conflict, I don't think there is any conflict that can lead to a big war right now, anywhere in the world. Uh, and in fact, as and when Ukraine and Russia reach some kind of an agreement, one of their first uh, agreements or sub agreements will be on the management of Dnieper River. So there they are. They have proved to be sensitive. Also, our recent work has been on artificial intelligence and the risk of nuclear war triggered by artificial intelligence. And again, I see that the leaders are quite sensitive, and they would like to prevent that. Uh, 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 Artificial intelligence poses four big risks in future. One is if the AI goes out of control. The second is if it gets into mass manipulation. The third is if it breaches cybersecurity and part of that cybersecurity of the nuclear governance system. And the fourth is AI can produce biological and chemical weapons. What we find is that this has been now uh, brought to the attention of political leaders by scientists, by think tanks, including the Nobel laureate scientists who were involved in developing AI. We have been quite active in this effort, and what we find that already out of these four, there is a growing consensus, at least on two, uh, on on making sure that AI doesn't produce or is not unable to produce biological and chemical weapons, and also on trying to minimize the damage through cybersecurity. The other two are under discussion. So I won't say that the political leaders don't respond. They do. Uh, at times, they don't, but at times they do. So it's a mixed record. It's we can't be pessimistic. Uh, and many political leaders have, and leave aside the efforts where I was involved in the past. There have been major efforts by a lot of young people, again by young women, which have succeeded in changing the world. In my book, A Word Without War, I have given many examples. I have told many stories. There was, I have a friend called Jodie Williams. She is a Nobel laureate, and now she is in her 60s. But in 1995-96, when she was in her 30s, she she had no support from anywhere. And she ran a campaign to ban landmines because landmines can cause lot of damage. And she succeeded in having a treaty signed by more than 150 countries, uh, which banned landmines, and in last 20 years, lot of the landmines have been deactivated as a result of her work. And she just brought together uh, civil society, think tanks, NGOs, and she achieved this success. Before her, there was a young woman called Randy Forsberg, and she did research and she showed the impact of nuclear weapon. And at the same time, there was a filmmaker. He made a film called The Day After, and that film also showed the devastating impact of nuclear war. And Ronald Reagan, who was the president of the United States, saw the demonstrations and research findings of this young woman, Randy Forsberg, and saw the movie The Day After. And he called up Mikhail Gorbachev, who was then the president of the Soviet Union. They met in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland, and they decided to abolish all the nuclear weapons. And the world would have been free of nuclear weapons in 1986. But in the very last hour of their negotiations, the bureaucrats prevailed, and the agreement got diluted, not aborted completely. So instead of abolishing completely, eventually the US, Russian, or Soviet negotiations resulted in reducing the number of weapons from 65, 66,000 to 10, 12,000 now. So, so there are many examples of young people, think tanks, others having an impact on changing the world at a global level. And I mean, ours is just one, but there are many others.
No, definitely, but I think we can relate with you more, and that again inspires us more, and I'm sure to our audiences as well. Sir, you right now you mentioned couple of example who are making global impact. Some of other youngsters at their times or other things.
Young, at that time they were young. No,
Yeah,
no, no. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Does it overwhelm when you are making a global impact? Everybody has their journey coming to that point, and that too also at a young age. You are making a global impact. Definitely, it's a big thing at that age when which you have achieved or your other friends have achieved. Does it overwhelm? How did you handle it?
No, it's, I mean, you feel something, you feel satisfaction which cannot be bought in the market. I won't trade this life for anything else. If somebody
True,
offered
very
me,
true.
unlimited amount of wealth and said, you take this wealth, but give up this life, I won't do that. Because what gives you real here is a pure satisfaction, and that cannot be measured in anything. I no, it's not overwhelming. It's just you just feel happy. Uh, After this UN Security Council session, uh, I remember we finished at 7 o'clock in the evening. We were sitting from 10 to 7. My biggest problem was to go to the bathroom while the session was going on. And in fact, I chose once to go to the bathroom and when I was away. Pakistan's representative, Malia Lodi, she came to speak. And when I came back, because every ambassador who spoke, every ambassador had 3-minute presence in Security Council. I had the permanent presence along with the permanent members of the Security Council. So when I came in, Malia Lodi was finishing her speech, the Pakistan ambassador, and I told her, I said, I'm sorry, I had to go to the bathroom, so I missed the earlier part of the speech. And she said, oh, the old India-Pakistan rivalry, you went away because I was going to speak. I said, no, I didn't know. But anyway, uh, so after that, we called on the UN Under Secretary General, and then Danilo, Ilmas, Fateh Ali and I, we were walking in streets of New York looking for a good restaurant. That was it. And then we had a yeah, just we just celebrated with a simple dinner between three of us. There was no party, nothing. It was just fun. Yeah.
Yeah, so good to know that a humanitarian relationship exists even at that level.
Yeah.
So, you just mentioned about nuclear, the conflict or the tussle between these power centers to become a nuclear power, and you also mentioned that it would have been aborted, but completely, like years ago, but it didn't. And now you are you are consulting P5 nations, and they are also in conflict right now. I mean, as a government, they are not in dialogue, but at the same time, you are doing advocacy about nuclear power and reducing it. So how you're managing? I mean, there is already trade war and other conflicts are going on between US, China, Russia, US for that matter. So how you are able to create dialogue as a think tank?
So,
Isn't it difficult?
no, see, from March 22, when the Ukraine war started, until January 25, when uh, when Donald Trump entered the White House, uh, I co-chaired along with the Swiss ambassador Thomas Greminger a process of dialogue between the five permanent members of the Security Council. So this was the only platform where the Americans and Russians were meeting in person while the Ukraine war was going on to try to address the nuclear issues. There was another platform where where the five countries were meeting also to address the nuclear issue. But they, after the Ukraine war, that started before the Ukraine war, but after the Ukraine war, they downgraded that to the lower officials. So we were meeting at the level of senior experts. It was a track two process, or track 1.5 as they call it in the diplomatic language, because we had the expert level dialogue and we had a direct meeting with the governments of the five countries through their ambassadors. And we were meeting in Geneva. Geneva was a neutral place. So we negotiated with the Swiss government to give visas to the Russians, because most of the European countries don't give visas with the Russians even now. So we had to negotiate. The Swiss government uh, made that possible as a neutral country. And our team was, we were meeting every 6 months, and our team was in between the meetings, doing research and finding out possible solutions. So initially we started in 22 with the overall objective of reducing the risk of a nuclear war between these countries. But then we soon realized that the greatest possibility of a nuclear war is because of the role of artificial intelligence in the decision support system. So we then focused on the role of AI, and so 23 and 24 we were almost totally focused on AI in the nuclear weapons management or nuclear weapons governance. And end of 24, just before Christmas, we had the last meeting in Geneva, and we reached the conclusions. And then these conclusions were published in February of 25 this year. Uh, but then we stopped because now we had a new president in the United States, and we thought, and he has communication with President Putin and Xi Jinping, and we thought that now it's up to the heads of government to take it ahead. So we did our work of identifying areas, and we published a technical paper of possible solutions. Now it's for the presidents of these countries to take it ahead.
Interesting. Like we are discussing wars, conflicts, your efforts to create dialogue, communication. Into 22, in 2022, you published a book,
Without war.
A World Without War, a book that argues that war is a choice. What motivates you to come up with such work? And do you really think that, I mean, the thought that you give that war is a choice, what experience brings you to that conclusion?
So in 2019, I brought together four Nobel laureates in peace. Mohammad El-Bardai from Egypt, Jody Williams, whom I mentioned earlier from the US, she is a Nobel Peace Laureate. Denis Mukwege from Congo, Lena Bovi from Liberia. I brought together these Nobel Peace Laureates in person in Normandy province in France. And we issued Normandy Manifesto for World Peace. So for several months, I was negotiating every single day the text of the uh, Normandy Manifesto for World Peace. It was a nice period. Every morning I used to wake up with a message from one of these Nobel laureates, and I would draft a response to their query and send it out by the evening, and next day they would come back with something else. And it was a very intellectually challenging time. And during that period, I realized that I have to do a deep thinking on the whole question of war, because while drafting this manifesto, Normandy Manifesto, uh, we were talking. My team was we were talking with all kinds of experts around the world on war and peace, uh, and the interest that the Normandy Manifesto generated led to two conclusions. One was that we launched this P5 process of nuclear risk reduction, and the second was that there should be some kind of intellectual output, because the manifesto is one page. But I wasn't taking it seriously. Uh, then on 2nd October 2019, which is 3 months after the Normandy Manifesto was published or issued, I was invited by the Oxford University to give a public lecture on the occasion of Mahatma Gandhi's 150th birth anniversary. So I elaborated the ideas in Normandy Manifesto in this lecture. And my colleague Ilmas was there. She was there in Normandy, and she was there in Oxford. And she said, "Look, I mean, people are asking you many deep questions, so you should now really find time and convert many of your thought processes into a book." And I said, "Yes, I must do that," but I was not getting time to do it because we were running an organization with 20 full-time people, very high caliber researchers. They were flying all over the world, not just us, but they. And my schedule at that time was I was traveling like 22, 23 days a month. Uh, and my researchers were traveling every alternate month. And even for us to meet each other was not that easy. And so in 2019, we decided to close Strategic Foresight Group, because we thought we must close it when we are at the pinnacle of success.
Oh.
And we helped everybody to get jobs, or they helped and themselves, a combination of the two. Some we helped, some they helped themselves. Uh, Janaina Tewani, the Mkomo, the half Panamanian girl, she went to Panama and became foreign minister at the same time. And so we decided to wind up, and we wound up. And then I thought, now I can write a book. And then the COVID happened, and the COVID prohibited me from moving out of the house. So I used my son's desk to sit, and I would go there to the desk at 10 in the morning, and I would sit there till 6 in the evening. And just like you do some study or appear for exam. And I wrote this book. So I wrote most of it in 2020, but then I did some work in 21. I had the draft reviewed by a number of people in the world, in different parts of the world. And so HarperCollins published it in India in 22. Leading French publisher published it in French in 23. A Spanish publisher published it in Spain in September 25, 3 months ago. A Mexican publisher published the Mexican edition of the Spanish book last month in October in Mexico. And around the same time, a Marathi edition came out. The Marathi edition is called Yuddha Nakarnare Jag. And so that's also just come out. So it's now spread everywhere.
Sir, you were talking about AI in nuclear power and management of nuclear weapons, governance of them, AI in decision making. We are in right now. AI is everywhere. AI is also in communication. We are living in social media and technology space. Do you think that this new trend in communication, technology, and AI is making any impact on this war and global relations? I mean, is this a new trend?
The AI that you see or that you use, like ChatGPT or DeepSeek, is a very small part of AI. it's not it's not a real thing. It's just a face. The real AI is a scientific AI, where the race is going on between US and China. So that's the AI uh, uh, that that is able to produce or create new scientific discoveries. That's the AI which may be able to evolve itself. And there is a big fear that that kind of AI may go out of control. That kind of AI is already able to help any terrorist to synthesize a biological weapon or a chemical weapon. So terrorism in future will be extremely dangerous uh, because of this advanced AI. That's the AI which can bypass the cyber security. So it's the advanced AI which scientists are extremely worried about. And recently, an appeal was issued by something like 65,000, 70,000 people, led by the scientists who created the AI, to put a ban on super intelligence, that we should not go towards super intelligence. And all the scientists in the world and the major uh, promoters of the AI companies like OpenAI or Google or the DeepSeek or the Baidu on Chinese side, uh, they all agree that there is a big danger with this scientific AI. So this AI that you see and that can be manipulated to create some pornography or or deep fake or those kinds of or financial crime, that's very small uh, problem. The real problem is that of AI likely to become autonomous, AI likely to get into massive manipulation, uh, enabling weapons of mass destruction, killing the cyber security. These are the real risks with AI. And with that, you don't know. Once AI becomes a lot more autonomous than it is now, uh, humans will lose control. I mean, we don't know how it will happen. Nobody knows. Not even the scientists who created. I met Jeffrey Hinton, who created the modern AI, the general purpose AI, at his house last year, and he's worried. They're all worried. Joshua Benjuo, I have exchanged a few emails with him. He's the world's most cited computer scientist. He's worried. All these people are worried about what will happen. And and one thing everybody is sure, all the scientists, that once AI reaches that level of super intelligence, it will be very difficult for humans to stop it. It might almost become like a species, but maybe not. I mean, but it's just the unpredictability, the uncertainty about the whole thing. Whereas we are mostly looking at AI at ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Grok, and to produce some the better draft of an email or write an essay or write a poetry or maybe even some input into a legal petition or something. That's very small use. Then there is the other AI, which was there before ChatGPT and all, which is called narrow AI, and that's the AI which is extremely useful. In fact, Pratap Rao Pawar, founder of not founder but chairman of Sakar, he has an AI project in Baramati to increase the productivity, and there are similar projects in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana to increase the productivity of agriculture. Now that's the narrow AI. That's the AI that you can use for human welfare, for agriculture. You can use the same principles for improving health, extending the health services. But that doesn't require ChatGPT or DeepSeek. That's called narrow AI. That was there before, uh, and that plays useful role. But the advanced AI, it increases the productivity, of course, but if you go more advanced, then you are entering a danger zone. It's just like nuclear weapons.
So you categorized AI, narrow AI. You explained usefulness of it. You also discussed the devastation that AI can bring in global, especially the war or political conflict space. But do you see that people are aware about all this? I mean, have you sensed that there is public awareness about it, or something more needs to be done on that front?
It's amazing. The top level scientists in the world they are very concerned. The companies which are creating this dangerous AI, they are themselves saying that we are creating dangerous AI. Elon Musk, Sam Altman, they are themselves saying that we are creating, but what they are saying is that everybody else is creating. I'm the good guy. I'm going to create a AI which is good for humanity, but everybody else is dangerous. But they are themselves saying it. So there is no denying. But at the ground level, I see even professors of engineering, professors of computer science in many Indian universities, they just deny that there is such a risk. I had my research team visiting very prominent institutions in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Mumbai, and they just deny that any risk exists because they are not aware, they don't know. And these are the people who are working on AI and who are working on computer science. And they just deny. And so they say that, oh, let's not think about the risk, let's just see how we can use for good of humanity. And of course, we should use it for good of humanity. But that AI was already there. That's the example of Baramati Agro Trust and many medical projects. That was already there. That there is no doubt you have to use it for health, water, environment, for those kinds of agriculture, for those kinds of causes. So most of the people, not that they are not aware, they are in denial. They don't want to accept it. And the government of India was also not sure how to address this. But in November, uh, the government kind of has now signal that it is open to these kinds of possibilities. So the government has done two things, and I hope young people take advantage of it. One, on the 3rd of November, the Prime Minister announced a fund of 1 lakh crore rupees for Indian scientists, Indian entrepreneurs, Indian institutions to get into deep AI, or the deep tech, or the scientist AI, not this local language models, and not the chat GPT type, but in the scientific AI. So the government of India is offering a 1 lakh crore funds. That's huge. But uh, we have to have the mindset in our ecosystem to be able to take advantage. And the second thing, the next day, the government announced the guidelines for AI, where they have recognized that there are risks. They have, including the risk of out of control. Uh, so this is now the government of India has acknowledged. So we now have, and I see this, the Brazilian government is debating their AI bill in the parliament. The Korean government is debating the AI bill in the parliament. I think India should debate the AI policy in the parliament. But I'm amazed the by the uh, denial. I won't say lack of awareness. There's just denial of many experts and professors and people working in the AI field in India, uh, to even consider that there are risks ahead.
I think, as you just said, let's be optimistic. I'm optimistic that at least it is being recognized and government is willing to fund it. So looking forward, that will be more meaningful, and we will be able to develop that mindset to be more meaningful towards using technology and as well as AI. Coming back to like moving towards conclusion of our podcast, you mentioned Ilmas couple of times, and I think you do business or you do research or anywhere, collaboration is very important, especially when you are starting up something. And I'm sure you mentioned that you started all this when you were in your 20s. So what will be your message? And I mean, I would like to ask how Ilmas contributed to your career growth so far as a collaborator, as a partner. What she brought on table from her end. I mean, you mentioned that she has been leading the operations of your firm. You also mentioned that it was a very conscious decision to stop in 2019. I mean, it is very important to know where to stop. So, a little more about your collaborations, your partnership with Ilmas, and your decision to come to conclusion as a strategic forum.
Uh, so I mentioned in the beginning that I followed four principles, and I kept the fifth one for the end. So the four I would repeat, drawing from the Indian philosophy, where Nishkam Karma Yoga, that you do because you believe in something. Results will follow. If you start thinking, what emoluments I will get, or what price I will get, you will never achieve the success. You have to believe, and this is, I know many Nobel laureates by now, not just Nobel laureates in peace, but Nobel laureates in science, and this has been their mantra, Nishkam Karma Yoga. They do because they do what they do because they have an inner voice telling them to do it. And if you want to become a manager in a software firm, then you develop a mindset uh, of rewards and remuneration. If you want to be a Nobel laureate in science, then you have to have a mindset of Nishkam Karma Yoga. And in that, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, we have to have a global view. And foresight, I mentioned earlier, Durdrushti, and Atmanirikshan. But all of this is not possible singularly. It is only possible in a collaborative mode. And we encourage countries to collaborate, like Turkey and Iraq were in war. When we got them to collaborate on Tigris River, the Congo Basin countries were in conflict. Right now, I mean, these 5 permanent members are totally at loggerheads, and we encourage them to collaborate to minimize the risk of AI-triggered nuclear war. Now, if I'm telling the whole world to collaborate and I don't have a collaborative principle in my own life and in my professional life, uh, I would be a hypocrite. So from the beginning, we have always I met Tilmas and Srikant in my earlier NGO, International Center for Peace Initiatives, which was just a small NGO we had set up. And then I was a diplomat in Sweden for 2 years. And when we came back, and we thought, like, all the new insights I had gained during my short diplomatic life as to how to extend it. That's when the idea of Strategic Foresight Group was born. And uh, and from the word go, it was very clear that this would have to be a collaborative effort. So every single decision we take, even though she oversees the operations, and I do a lot of the political part, but every single decision we take is a joint decision. Every single. I mean, I may be the face while I'm negotiating with the prime ministers or presidents, but every decision is a joint decision. It's well thought out. We argue with each other, we counter argue with each other, and it's much better that your faults are identified uh, uh, in your own at your own desk, rather than with some head of government you are talking with. So everything is a joint decision, and it's joint thinking and joint execution, and then we decide who's best at what. So now many government, they don't negotiate with me; they negotiate with her, because they think I'm too short tempered and I will throw away the I will walk away. So they negotiate with her. But of course, at the higher political level, they want to talk with me, and that is how we have worked.
I think what excellent partnerships can bring to world. You are one of the leading example, you and Ilmas, and of course the.
And that's what I would encourage all young people who are listening to this podcast. That I would just end with one anecdote or that I heard, uh, uh, that to win marathon, it's good, but when you win marathon, you leave everybody else behind you. To run along with everybody else and reach your destination together with others who believe in you and who believe like you is much greater than winning the marathon alone.
Excellent, sir. Incredible insight for all youngsters, where you are asking us to be more and more collaborative in our approach. And I'm sure my young audience will take a message from your very inspiring journey. I also take an opportunity to invite you for Geo Vision Summit that Saka Media Group and APG Globale are arranging. Thank you so much for your time and insights.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Same here.
Thank you.